The Flamingos is a group or a flamboyance of friends who love to write and love to critique. The best part is sometimes some of us agree and sometimes we don't, because we all bring our own perspective to a reading and to a question. In this podcast series, we share our perspectives on writing through questions we receive at Flamingos Write Now at gmail.com. I'm Wendy Kendall, and this year, the Wild Rose Press published my cozy mystery, Cat Out of the Bag. That's cat with a K, introducing Katherine Watson's celebrated purse designer and amateur sleuth.
Hi, I'm Avis Adams, and I'm an English teacher and writer with one book of poetry published and a YA novel with an editor, so fingers crossed.
Thanks, Avis. My name is Carl Lee. I write paranormal fantasy. I also have a book with an editor that I'm hoping everyone crosses their fingers for as well.
Hi, I'm Catherine Brown. I am a writer of published and award-winning short stories and flash fiction, and I'm working on a YA fantasy novel.
Hi, my name is Melanie McDonald. I'm a lawyer, and I write mysteries about women who kill and the men who drive them to it.
So we are quite a range of individuals. So our first question is, where do you get your ideas for your books? For me, I just watch the world around me until I see something that makes me say, huh? As a person that writes paranormal, I see the world a bit askew anyway. Ascribing otherworldly explanations to what is probably a fairly mundane event. Face it, no one is interested in the mundane. With my novel Selfies, I heard an ad on the television about the San Francisco Museum of Natural History a few years ago. They were promoting their Aboriginal display. The next ad was for a selfie stick, and I said, huh? Why? And then it made me think, why are there so many cultures scattered across the globe that believe that photos trap your soul? Then I started to ask myself, what if they were right? Sometimes all it takes is a few minutes to write down a couple of quick notes. Selfies trap souls. The basic story reveals itself. Other times it requires more work. I always jot down whatever notes I have for a basic story idea when it's ready, and then I start writing. The final place I get my ideas from are what people say, you should write a book about X. I take their idea, twist it until no one would recognize its origin. Catherine?
Those are some great ways to generate ideas, Carl. I write fantasy and fiction that often has a magical element. So I can relate to your comment about looking at the mundane in a new way or putting a fantastical twist on an ordinary idea. Sometimes I start my story ideas with a general scenario. My idea for my young adult fantasy novel came from the random question, what would it be like to be the child of a notorious tyrant? Adolf Hitler, for example. I gave that a twist and put my tyrant's son into a fantasy environment with magic. I asked myself, what would make it even harder to be the child of someone so terrible? It occurred to me that if my character were the spitting image of the evil parent, it would make it a lot worse. People would fear them. Now I have a story idea. I just had to build a world and a plot that worked for that scenario. I have several other book ideas percolating in the background. These began through using story prompts. I find that story prompts help me to be far more creative than I might otherwise have been with my idea. I wrote a short story from the prompts and found that there's enough there to support a full novel. My likely next in line novel started with the prompt for a story in the comedy genre. It had to have a character who was a copycat, and it had to have fundraising for the subject. My book features a woman who is raising money for a cat shelter by selling purses, and someone has copycatted her design, putting her cat shelter at risk. I have another story in mind for a future novel that also came from a prompt. The genre was fantasy, the character was a zookeeper, and the subject was treasure hunting. I came up with a historical fantasy set in medieval China to mix it up a little. My zookeeper tends dragons, and he undertakes a quest for fabled jewels on a winged horse. Story prompts have an amazing power. I would never have come up with that idea without the prompt. I highly recommend giving story prompts a try to add creative twists to your ideas. Melanie, where do you get your ideas?
Thanks, Catherine and Carl, for the great ideas. When I first started writing, I used the mythology of my family in the small town where I grew up. The broken homes, the crop failures of the Great Depression, the men and women who fought in the myriad of wars as a source of inspiration. After several failed attempts, I found these subjects devoid of fun. So I decided to write about a subject I know well, women who commit violent crimes. I call it Women Who Kill and the Men Who Drive Them to It. This gave me the opportunity to write about crime and mysteries and edgy female protagonists, all things that suit me and my particular skill set well. I say this because I want to tell you that if you start with an idea and it doesn't work, don't beat yourself up. Find something else to write. Find something you feel passionate about, but also something that's fun, and people it with characters you want to spend a lot of time with, a lot of angsty time with. My husband and I play a game sometimes when we're out at restaurants. We choose some other diners and imagine stories about why they are there. We try to notice things about them that give us clues. For instance, two women are drinking champagne. Did they just sell a book to a great publisher? Did they rob a bank? Did they just kill their husbands? Are they aliens who have just perfected the gamma rays? Are they plotting the assassination of a senator? Stories are everywhere. You just have to use your imagination to find them. How about you, Wendy? Where do you get your story ideas?
Well, I echo the word passion, whether it's a long time passion or a passion of the moment that will shine through in your writing and readers immerse themselves in it. Passion is one of the ingredients of a page turner. You invest time and energy into your written work, and without a drive behind it, your enthusiasm to finish may run out of gas. What do you love to read? Mystery, romance, horror, biography, fantasy, and many more genres to choose from, including blending two or more. Write what you enjoy. What questions do you ponder, whether big life thoughts or individually sized? What things do you enjoy and in what places? I've heard it said to write what you know, but you can also write what you learn and research. For your writing is so much fun. It energizes and you return to your writing with a renewed spirit. Characters are who drive your story forward. Do you see in a person or family glimpses of a story you want to tell? Personality or events in their life may be the basis for a fictional character you're excited to create. Once born, your characters can take you on unexpected adventures. I love all kinds of mysteries, especially cozy mysteries, so the genre for my book was an easy choice and inspired by my hero of cozy authors, Laura Childs. The passion I had for my book, Cat Out of the Bag, was the characters. I wanted to explore our very human capacity for courage to create the life you want despite what you're handed, the strength to learn from mistakes you make along the way, and the wisdom of compassion about regrets in retrospect. That's a lot for one book, and that's one of the reasons this is a series. And a cozy mystery is wonderful for my interest because they're filled with interesting characters, all with different lives worth examining in turn. And so interesting for author and reader alike to analyze human nature and see which character takes these personable traits to dire consequences. In the case of Cat Out of the Bag, to murder. I also have a personal passion for purses and how they actually give a glimpse into the lives of women through history. Check out my blog, A Passion for Purses, on Blogspot to see how I wove this interest of mine into my mystery. And that made a lot of the story playtime for me. And the research took me places I never predicted. For example, when I started writing, I didn't know that there's a purse museum named Essay in Little Rock, Arkansas, that tells about women and their purses through the decades. of course, when I found out, I immediately planned a trip that where I had so much fun doing my research with the exhibits, with the people running the museum, including the inspiring owner, Anita Davis, who has started so many successful and fabulous ventures. You'll see on the first page of my book that the Essay Museum is one of the endorsements for my book. You never know the exciting places your writing will lead you. What is it that you want to share with the world of readers? Avis, what do you say?
Thanks, Wendy. And I love all these responses, and I agree with all of you. Research is a tool that enters into the fray of what you do as you get your ideas. I write poetry and novels as well, and I've even done some research for some of the poems I write. I love to get ideas from my hikes, and I love to travel, and I get ideas from traveling as well. So starting with a question that won't let me go is another way that I get an idea, and then there's the famous what if question, and that's the inspiration for many books and short stories and screenplays. And it's full of prompts, like Catherine was talking about. Prompts are so important, and what if is full of them. So I recommend that book for getting ideas. So one question that I had was, where am I from and who am I? And that's a huge question for anybody. So I went to my grandparents, who on both sides are Scandinavian. They're from Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And we have a family pride of those countries. And it wasn't until I traveled to those countries that I realized how much of the old country my grandparents had brought back with them. And I learned so much on my travels about what a good job my family had done, but I wanted to know more. So I started doing research, and it sucked me down the rabbit hole of the Viking world. And I spent like 4 years learning about the Vikings. And so my first novel that I ever wrote was about a girl growing up on a farm during the Viking era. And I started it, and I had to set it aside, and I had to do the research. So after 4 years, I ended up with 4 Viking novels. And it was a lot of fun. But for any book that I write, and especially for my book Off the Grid that's with an editor right now, research is very, very important. So, but stories can be found anywhere. They can be found eavesdropping on conversations, in the mall or shopping, wherever you are. They can be found listening to the news or watching a documentary. You could be a lot like me, and you can find ideas hiking on a trail or listening to family stories. Wherever you get your ideas, keep notes like Carl does so you can revisit them. And who knows, you may find yourself gathering information, doing research, and maybe writing a novel. As a poet, I get ideas from my surroundings. And though poetry was my genre, I've fallen in love with the novel form and building worlds that my characters can survive in and learn to thrive. I love creating that and creating worlds. So writing is a wonderful journey of self-exploration and growth. And in the end, who knows? You might end up with a wonderful book to share with the world. So thank you, Flamingos, for a great session on where do you get your ideas? And thank you, fellow writers, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our podcast and learned something you can take away with you to help you in your own writing. So please send us your questions about writing to flamingoswritenow@gmail.com. No caps, no spaces, and you might see your question answered and discussed on this podcast, and we might have some good ideas for you. You never know. So join us next time when Flamingos Write Now will answer the question, how do you start your novel? Thank you very much.